So, why have I decided to stop investing in the US dollar and start investing in cryptocurrencies? Well, there are a couple reasons. Actually, I'm going to give you three here. So, the first reason is inflation. Do you know what inflation is? Inflation is a tax that everybody's paying in the US and around the world. Basically, every single government has a central bank now. And what happens is the central banks print more of these. Now, when they print a lot of these, that means the ones you have, trying to make this simple, but the dollars that you have in your possession actually lose value. So every time they print more, your dollar is worth less. And if you actually look at the Federal Reserve, their goal every single year is to have an inflation of 2%. Now, what does an inflation of 2% mean? Okay, so let's say this right here, it's going to be a bad example, but let's say this is $100. An inflation of 2% every year means after 1 year, this, instead of being $100, it would be $102. Now, this is a compounding effect. So every year it's 2% on that year. So every year it goes up by 2%, then 2% of that year, 2% of that year. And now, since the conception of the Federal Reserve, since the creation of the Federal Reserve, our dollar has actually lost 95 to 96% of its purchasing power. So for about $1 in 1913 could basically purchase what $16 to $20 you need $16 to $20 to purchase right now. So every year, this is losing more and more value. Now, that's why a guy named Robert Kiyosaki says savers are losers. Because anyone who's saving these is actually losing purchasing power. Now, it doesn't look like you're losing money, but what you can actually buy with that money goes down every single year. It's an invisible tax. Now, that's one reason I like Bitcoin. Now, what does that have to do with Bitcoin? Bitcoin is not inflationary. Bitcoin is deflationary. Now, what does that mean? That means there is actually a solid amount of Bitcoin. So there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin that are ever mined. That means over time, as the demand for Bitcoin grows, and as more and more people are getting into Bitcoin, it'll be a supply and demand thing. So the price of Bitcoin will go up. Whereas the US dollar, they'll print more and more and more and more, and then the actual purchasing power of what your dollar can buy will go down and down and down. If you actually look at the standards of living and how much money we made relatively to what the dollar is worth, our standard of living has been going down. Now, it may look like that's been going up because there's a lot of innovations in technology, there's a lot of things we've done to make productivity, efficiency, and all these things go up. So you may not feel that, but these are just the facts. The next reason I like Bitcoin, besides it's a deflationary, not inflationary thing like the dollar, is that it's decentralized. Now, what does decentralized mean? A decentralized thing or currency is something that isn't controlled by any body or group. Now, the US dollar, do you know the place that actually controls how many of these we make? It's actually called the Federal Reserve. So the Federal Reserve System, where the Federal Reserve issues these notes, or these IOU notes. With Bitcoin, it's all done with math. It's all basically, the miners are all solving a quote-unquote problem and then getting rewarded with Bitcoin. Now, I'll go into that later in other videos. It's a little complicated, but with decentralization, it means there's not one body that makes the decisions. Bitcoin is a collective group of everybody, and the blockchain is hosted on all, like not everyone's computer, but hosted on computers all around the world. So basically, Bitcoin isn't being controlled by one body. The messed up thing about the Federal Reserve is it's not even owned by the government. The word federal basically means nothing. The Federal Reserve is owned by private stockholders who have invested interest in doing certain things. Now, the messed up thing you may not know about the Federal Reserve is every time they print a dollar, they charge interest. So let's say they issue $1, they're going to charge interest on that dollar that they printed. Now, what does that actually mean in the long term? So basically what that means is that if they print a dollar, to pay that back, so everything is debt-based. So when they print something, we need to pay that back. That's what the national debt is essentially. But everything's debt-based. So for a dollar, we owe them $1.10. Now, what's the problem with that? The problem is we can't pay it back. If every single dollar that the Federal Reserve ever issued was put back, it would not pay the interest. What is that? That's a big Ponzi scheme right there. That's a really, really big Ponzi scheme. So that's another thing you need to understand when getting into Bitcoin. This is a decentralized thing that has a specific amount of coins that isn't controlled by a governing body. It's controlled by all the people, and it's controlled by math. There aren't people who are sitting in a boardroom making decisions. It's a 1 + 1 = 2 type of system. So, and the other thing is you're not able to lie. This is the third one. So with the blockchain, you can't lie. It's a trustless system. You don't need to trust that the Federal Reserve is going to do the right thing. You don't need to trust that the banks aren't going to screw you over. You know that Bitcoin is math. 1 + 1 = 2. 2 + 2 = 4. And that's how Bitcoin works, the simplest way. It's all based on numbers. It's all based on math. And unless the numbers work out, Bitcoin, you won't be able to do it. You can't lie to Bitcoin. But the Federal Reserve can lie with numbers. The banks can lie. The banks can take your money and do things like bail-ins. So these are the top 3 reasons I like Bitcoin. I hope this made some semblance of sense. And if I messed up on any of the terminology, that's totally possible. I'm not a super genius. But that's generally what I wanted to get through in this video. So I hope you guys like this one, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace, guys.